Hi, everybody. Today we're going to create a new app using Firebase push notifications. To start, we're going to create a new project in Xcode. You can see I have version 15.2. I'm going to click Create New Project. And I'm going to select App. So we're creating a Swift UI project. I'm going to click Next. And finally, I'll write Push as the name of my project and save it on my desktop. The first thing I'm going to do is add a new file called app delegate into my project. I'm going to click on push, add new file. I'm going to select the Swift file. Next, I'm going to name it app delegate. In the app delegate file, we're going to import UI kit, because the app delegate, what it does is it has a reference to the lifecycle of the application. So we want to make sure that UI kit provides access to that lifecycle. We're going to create a new class called app delegate. And it's going to inherit of type NS object and also UI application delegate. So I'm going to add a standard method. So this method, is did finish launching with options. So as soon as the application launches for the first time, it will start. This method will be called specifically. And the only thing I'll put in for now is just return true. So this is just kind of a container for what we're going to be adding in terms of introducing push notifications. So the next thing I need to do is go into my app. I'm going to essentially add a reference to my app delegate here, my Swift UI file. So I'm going to type in UI application delegate adapter, app delegate .self. I'm going to create a variable for my app delegate. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to click on push the project. And we're going to click on signing in capabilities. So we're going to add a new capability, and that's background modes. And what we want to select is remote notifications. This will allow notifications from coming in from the outside. Another capability we're going to add is push notifications. So I'm going to type push, I'm going to include that. And as you can see, we've enabled those capabilities within the application. Next, we're going to import the Firebase libraries using the Swift Dependency Manager. So we're going to click on File, Add Package Dependencies. So you can see the dependencies called Firebase iOS SDK. If you want to search for a URL or include a URL to that package, you can go on GitHub, and you'll notice here that you have github.com/firebase/firebase iOS SDK. You just have to copy that in, put it up here in the interface, and you can download the package. But since I've already done it before, that's why it's showing up. And I'm just going to click Add Package. It's going to download the package for me and include it in my project. So I'm going to click on Add Packages. And you'll notice down here that all of the packages have been added to my project. The next thing I want to do is to make sure that the application has Firebase messaging support built in. So I'm going to click on General, scroll down to Frameworks, Libraries, and Embedded Content. I'm going to click the plus sign down here and type in Firebase messaging. And I'm going to add it. So this explicitly says that I want to use push notifications or Firebase messaging within my application. The next step we're going to do is to log into the Apple developer account to create a new push notification key that we'll use within Firebase. In order to do this, you'll obviously need a paid developer account on developer.apple.com. So I'm going to click on certificates, and then I'm going to click on keys, and I'm going to select create a key. I'm going to click enable Apple push notifications. And I'm going to create a key called push. And then I'm going to click on register. So what you'll want to do is to download the key that you created. You'll also want to make note of the project ID up here, which I've obscured because this is on the internet, obviously. And the key ID that's down here. You'll need both for Firebase. The next step involves creating a Firebase account. You could do it with your Gmail credentials. What I'm going to do is go to the console, and I'm going to create a new project. So the name of my project will be Push. And I'm just going to disable Google Analytics for this specific project, but you can enable it if you want. And the project will get created. Now you can see the project is ready. So I'm going to click continue. So we're going to go down here under engage and select messaging. Under messaging, you'll see that there's an option of creating an iOS app. So we're going to click on iOS. It's going to ask me for the bundle ID for my app. So in my case, it's com.jldavid.push. But your bundle ID will likely be different depending on what it is. You can look into your project settings to see what the bundle ID is for in your case. So I'm going to click register app. I'm going to download the Google Services -info.plist file. This is extremely important. Then I'm going to click next. This is directing me to add the Firebase SDK, which we've already done. So that's good. We're going to click next. And this is providing me with some initialization code in order to start Firebase within the application. So we're going to add that initialization code in a moment. So I'm going to click next, and I'm going to click continue to console. So now we've created our iOS app. I'm going to click on settings, project settings, and then cloud messaging. Down here, you'll notice that we have our iOS app indicated here. I'm going to upload the APN auth key that we downloaded from the Apple site earlier. It's right here on my desktop. I'm going to click upload. So what you do is you take the auth key and you drag it right here. And then you need to add the key ID, which is provided on the Apple site, and the team ID that's also required from the Apple site. If you have any issues with your keys or anything else, it will usually bring up a little red X to indicate that there's an issue. Now, all that remains is to import the Google Services plist, write a bit of code in our app delegate, and then test the push notifications. So we're almost at the finish line. So the first thing I'll do is grab this Google Services info.plist and drag it into the project. It will ask me if I want to copy the item. I'll make sure this is checked off. I want to create a folder reference so the project's aware of that file. So I'm going to finish. And as you can see, now Google Services -info.plist is now included in my project. The next thing I'm going to do is initialize Firebase. So in order to do that, I have to add a couple of import statements. So I'll import Firebase core, and I'll import Firebase messaging. After doing that, I can then initialize Firebase. So I'm going to type in Firebase app.configure, and this will initialize Firebase as soon as the application is launched. I'm also going to add the user notifications import. So I'm going to type in import user notifications. Now that we've included all the imports, we're going to inherit from UN user notification center delegate and messaging delegate. This will give us the methods that we need in order to capture all the push notifications coming in. So I'm going to write down UN user notification center delegate and messaging delegate. Now I'm going to add a new function, which is user notification center will present with completion handler. I'll add another function, user notification center did receive response. And lastly, we're going to add a function for receiving the registration token. So in this function, what we want to do is as soon as the registration token is received from Firebase, we want to print it out because we need that token in order to send push notifications. So I'll type in print Firebase token. And you can see the Firebase token is sent through this FCM token parameter. So what I'm going to do is cast that into a string. And so as soon as that token is received from Firebase, I will get a copy of it. And that token will be used to send push notifications, as I indicated. So when the application finishes launching, what you need to do is present the user with a permissions dialog to ask them if they are willing to allow push notifications to be received from your app. This is very standard for all iOS applications. So what I'm going to do is add some code in my did finish launching with options that'll provide that request authorization to get the permission and therefore to start accepting push notifications. So there's different ways of doing it depending on what version of iOS you're on. I'm assuming that we're using iOS 10 and above because there's a specific way of doing that. If you're going to write a production application, obviously you'll have to handle every case of the different versions of iOS. But in this case, we're going to use the most modern versions. So I'm going to type if available. So if our application is being launched on a device that has iOS 10 or above, the permission dialog will show up. I'm now going to use a method call of UN user notification center to request the authorization from the user. So it basically presents a prompt for the user. So if the permission's been granted, then granted will be true. So I'm going to print that off. Now we're going to assign a responsibility for the UN User Notification Center and messaging to the current delegate. Now for the next method, we're not going to implement anything. We need the method in place in the app delegate for the code to work. But at this point, we're not going to try to extract the device token because the device token is very specific to Firebase. And if it was not a Firebase token, then we would need to implement something here to be able to read the token. With the next piece of code, we're going to handle the presentation of the push notification. So what we need to do is write a completion handler that handles banners, lists, and sounds, which are some of the outputs that can be presented from a push notification. Lastly, once the notification has been received, what we want to do is take the information in that push notification and then post it in the notification center. So I made a little tiny mistake. Here, what I need to do is add a completion handler. So what I'll do is write so once the notification has been posted, then we want to call the completion handler to say everything's done and you should complete this function. Before launching the app, we're going to add one last piece of code. And here I'm going to type in application, register for remote notifications. Now it's time to launch our application. So I'm going to click the play sign. And the simulator will come up. And it will install the application on the simulator. Now we've received a prompt to say whether I'd want to accept the notifications. You'll recall we added some code in did finish to allow for that. So I'm going to click allow. And you can see in the logs that I received a Firebase token, and I also received a permission granted true. So that means my application is ready to receive push notifications. So the next step, I'm going to minimize my app. And I'm going to copy this Firebase token. If we go back into Firebase, we can then send a push notification to our app. So what I'll do is I'll click on Create Your First Campaign. I'm going to select Firebase Notification Message. And then I'm just going to write test. I'm going to send a test message. And then it's asking me for a Firebase registration token. So we just copied it from Xcode. I'm going to paste it here and press the plus sign. Then I'm going to send test. And you can see in the simulator window, we just received a push notification, meaning that everything's been set up properly and your app is now able to receive push notifications from Firebase.